and welcome to the monthly event of the African People's Solidarity Committee. So in today's event, we will be discussing how white feminism is used as a tool of colonialism, and we are calling on all white people to stand in solidarity with African and colonized people. My name is Brendan, and I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee. The African People's Solidarity Committee was formed by the African People's Socialist Party in 1976 with the mandate that we organize other white people to build the movement of reparations and genuine solidarity with the liberation of African people. That is our assignment, and we work under the direct leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Before we get started, if you are tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe so you can get alerts whenever we go live or post a new video. If you are tuning in on Facebook, please share with please share this live stream with friends, share it with everybody, and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. We'll have a Q&A later on in the program, so make sure to take notes. Please enter your questions in the Q&A feature on Zoom or in the comments of YouTube or Facebook. We'll have chat moderators that'll take those down, and we'll be sure to get to those later. I want to let everybody know that this event is a fundraiser for the Uhuru Solidarity Center, which is where we are right now, it's the national headquarters of the Solidarity Movement. It is a beautiful organizing center located on the south side of St. Louis with a big banner out front that says "Unity through Reparations." This building is owned by the party's Black Star Industries, and it is a fundraiser for the building. And I just want to let everyone know the goal tonight is to raise $1,000, and I believe that we can do that. I believe we can surpass that. So I'm asking on everybody, now or just, anytime throughout this entire webinar, please go to APSC Uhuru, UHURU.org/donate, and that will be in the chat as well. So for today's event, we will hear an overview presentation by African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess and APSC Secretary General Allison Haney, who is a member. And they will also be interviewing an incredibly special guest who will be joining us later, Yejide Orunmila, who is a member of the African People's Socialist Party and president of the African National Women's Organization that just held a historic national conference this past weekend here in St. Louis. I would like to salute our leadership, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Omali Yeshitela, who developed the political theory of African internationalism and who represents the leadership of the African Revolution around the world. I salute Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela, who coordinates the economic development work of the movement, including the inspiring Black Power Blueprint programs here in St. Louis, Missouri. So wherever you're tuning in from, please make a trip out here and come see this in person. It's absolutely incredible, and I live here, and it's bigger every time I see it. It's incredible. But now I am excited for us to get into this topic. So I want to give a big welcome to APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess and APSC Secretary General Allison Haney. Turning it over to you.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Comrade Brendan. It's great to be here. I want to welcome everybody to this event tonight of the African People's Solidarity Committee. I want to say that we're very, very honored to have with us tonight a leading member, a member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party and the leader of the African National Women's Organization, Yejide Orunmila. Uhuru, Comrade Yejide. It's very, very powerful to have you with us. Thank you so much. And, just want to say before we get started that we want to say free Palestine, free Leonard Peltier, hands off Uhuru, and victory to African people. And I want to join, before we start, in saluting our leadership, Deputy Chair Onizane Yeshitela. I want to say, who leads the work of the Economic Front the political institutions of the African People's Socialist Party, which Comrade Brendan had just talked about, the Black Power Blueprint, and many other fronts of the party that are actually on the ground in a way that are tangible, that you can see, that is real dual and contending power in the African community, and which is transforming, has transformed the whole situation here in St. Louis to show that what it looks like for African people to experience Black power, to have political and economic power in their own hands, and have transformed the most impoverished neighborhood of St. Louis into a beautiful and thriving just, you know, economic center and just a community hub along West Florissant Avenue that enables the community to participate in a beautiful life, and has the whole look of the community and everything else has transformed. It's really, really brilliant. I hope everybody can come to St. Louis and see that if you haven't already. And of course, we want to salute Chairman Omali Shatella, who is our leader, and to say that the African People's Solidarity Committee is an organization of white people formed by Chairman Omali Shatella, working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, formed in 1976, almost 50 years ago, 48 years ago, to go into the white community, to organize other white people, to first of all recognize that the African Revolution is our revolution, that our future is in the liberation of African people and oppressed and colonized peoples, the indigenous people. This is their land, and that there's not a separate kind of revolution that white people have. You know, that the reality is that this system, as the chairman has told us and taught us, is built by Europe leaving the continent of Europe, assaulting Africa, stealing the gold and resources of Africa, kidnapping African human beings, and turning them into commodities for sale, which created this massive wealth for Europe, for white people, and transformed the world into the colonizers and the colonized. And, you know, just recognizing that Africa is the foundation of that, and that the indigenous people, the genocide against them is another piece of the foundation of this parasitic system that we live in, as well as the colonization of the people of India, the British and the US imposition of opium into India, China, and Southern Asia, which created another massive, just input of wealth into Europe and into North America for white people. So everything that we have is what the chairman calls the colonial mode of production, that there's nothing innocent. There's nothing that we thought of, that we did, or we farmed this land, or we worked in factories and we built factories, because this whole land is stolen. It is drenched in the blood of indigenous and African people, and all of the ability that we have to experience prosperity and goals for our future, and the ability to be able to have a job, or to go to college, or just be able to create a business or anything else, is based on the stolen wealth and stolen land. So that is the premise that we have to start this event with today, and what we're going to be talking about with Comrade Secretary General Ali. I just really want to welcome you as well. Here, it's going to be very exciting, and it's, as I said, it is very, very much of an honor to be able to welcome you, President Yejide, and to understand this question that everything is dominated by the reality of the colonial mode of production, including feminism, including how white women experience ourselves in the world, that yes, as the chairman has said, there are contradictions with, with men and certainly with our ruling class, but that it sits on a pedestal of the oppression of African people. And so, this is the way that we have to have this discussion, and also understanding that the white feminist movement has been something that has been incredibly historically, all the way back to this, the suffragettes and all that, who got the right to vote at the expense of the enslaved African women and African people. That, the feminist movement, white feminist movement, has always been opportunist, interventionist, and worked on self-interest at the expense of African people. And, this whole understanding that of the African National Women's Organization, that there is the ability of African women to be liberated within the context of the national liberation of the whole people. So, just really, really great, really excited to get into this discussion. And, today we do salute the Palestinian people that are on the front lines of the anti-colonial struggle today. And Comrade Ali, I want to turn it over to you, and then we'll get into this discussion.
Uhuru. Well, thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny, and I just really appreciate that profound, statement that you just made to introduce this really important event tonight. And it's really an honor to be here, and I just want to unite with your salute to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Yeshitela, and to President Yejide of the African National Women's Organization. And I just want to agree with what Comrade Brendan was saying. We're here in this beautiful Uhuru Solidarity Center in South St. Louis, and I'm new here, but I know people everywhere I go, people have seen this center. Literally, I say, have you seen that building with Unity Through Reparations on it, on the front? And people are like, oh yeah, I really wonder what that is. And it looks amazing. So it's
we have
tremendous.
To do more to tell the story.
I know,
we
gotta get people in here, but it's just an honor to be here, and this is an important front of the African People's Socialist Party's work and strategy, as Brendan said, to go out into the white community and bring people in under the basis of the understanding that you just put out, Chairwoman Penny, that we owe reparations, and you can come right here and pay reparations and participate in this work behind enemy lines. And as Brendan said, we want to raise $1,000 tonight. We know we can do that. We've got to pay off the mortgage and get out into the community and really bring the people into this beautiful Solidarity Center.
So if you want to donate, and we're asking you to, you can go to apscuhuru.org/donate. And we're going to remind you several times, and we will be thanking everybody who has given. But thank you, Comrade Ali, for that. So Uhuru, President Yejide, I just really want to salute you. For those who don't know, this past weekend was the convention, the national convention, I believe the annual convention of the African National Women's Organization here in St. Louis. And I know Comrade Ali and I had the honor of being able to attend that and see it. It was so dynamic. So yes, so just congratulations. What a dynamic convention and incredible organization that you have led and built. And there's so many powerful African women who are real leaders of that. Uhuru, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Comrade.
So, well, first of all, tell us about the African National Women's Organization. And I just really want to also say, and I don't know if there's a place where people can get this, but this was a little booklet put out by President Yejide with her political report. And it is brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. It's called African Women Forwarding the African Revolution to Free Us All. I don't know if there's a place where people could order that, or they could see it on your website perhaps, but I really recommend it. It's a very profound analysis of
Mhm.
why there is and needs to be an African National Women's Organization. One of the things you say is ANWO inserts Africa into any space we enter. And talk to us about ANWO and how, among many other things, it includes African women from around the world.
Yeah, so I just want to, I just appreciate you comrades for inviting me on this program, and I encourage everyone to donate this evening to ensure that we can have self-determination, that we can get this center off of the books of the bank so that we can have it for ourselves. And, you know, the more that people donate, the more we'll be able to, the faster we're able to accomplish that. So I appreciate that. And I also want to salute the leadership of APSC, the leadership of USM, for the incredible work that you have been doing around reparations and completing and following the directives of the African People's Socialist Party for so many years. And of course, Comrade Payne, you as somebody who was one of the indicted three of the Uhuru three, also fighting the hands off Uhuru case as well. So this is an incredible time to be alive. It's also an incredible time to be engaged and seeing in the world how colonialism is being challenged at every single step. And like you said earlier, like with the Palestinian resistance, really bringing this question of colonialism, something that the party has been talking about for many, many years, really bringing it to the forefront so that they can't call that racism. Like they have to call it colonialism. That's exactly what it is. And really being able to, you know, that really helped to define, you know, the topic or the title of the ANWO Convention. We thought it was really important, which was African women taking a stand against imperialism, colonialism, and neocolonialism. And we thought that was really important because previous conventions we've talked about Black women, the Black Women Convention, but you want to be a little bit more finite in terms of like how we are framing the work that we are doing and how African National Women's Organization is coming into this convention, how we're leaving this convention. So people are clear that we are anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, revolutionary African women's organization, as opposed to some other kind of organization that has a women's wing. And the question of women has been really important in the history of the party, and we thought that it was really important because the party, you know, helps us understand like the colonial question is the primary contradiction, like over everything else, you know, that African women were colonized as a part of the entire African people, and therefore everything that we experience is as Africans is a result of that colonial domination. So our convention really just went into we expected it to talk to, you know, different African women all over the world. We expected to bring in other women who have been victims of colonialism as well. So women from Palestine, from Mexico, from Philippines, to also share how they understand their own struggle and how it unites with ANWO or African women. And then we had a panel, you know, with women in the party. And I think that the convention, I might be answering some other questions early, but like, I'll come back to it. But like this convention for us was really a definitive convention that sets a trajectory of our organization that is more clear than what we feel has been in the past. And so we really wanted to be able to bring that out. The colonial question is something that we wanted to bring out of this convention.
Uhuru. Uhuru, thank you.
Uhuru. Yes, Uhuru President Yejide, that was excellent. And I was really honored to be in the convention this past weekend too. And it was so powerful, you know, to see the leadership of everybody in that organization that you've been building. And, you know, there was so many things about it that organizationally and politically seemed tremendous advances. And we just wanted to see if you could sum up how you saw, you know, some of the highlights. I know you've mentioned some of it, but if you could say a little more about what the highlights were for ANWO for this convention, which was really historic.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. First of all, I don't think I answered one part of your first question, which was ANWO being able to bring in Africa to any situation. Um,
Mhm.
because I think that's really important. Because we organize with Black people all the time, and they say that they and everything, African descendants, African peoples with us, and we may talk about different aspects of Africa, but there's not a claim to Africa. There's not a mission that people aren't driven by an actual overturning of the colonial parasitic relationship that Africa is engaged in with the colonizer. And so when we walk into a room, we are Africans who has a mission of freeing Africa from colonialism, as opposed to just dealing with specific issues that may exist in the continent of Africa or different leaders or something like that. We say we want the total freedom and liberation of Africa. And ANWO as a strategy of the party is a part of that objective to help win, the total liberation of Africa. And some of the highlights of the convention I thought were our panel discussions. They were long titles, so I'm going to say Unite. We had one called the Unite the International African Working Class, where we brought in African women from around the world, from Colombia, Angola, from Brazil, and to speak about how they understood, the contradictions that African women were experiencing in those places and how they understood, their relationship to it. So it's a really good opportunity to hear, the international perspective of African women. Our goal, obviously, with this panel was to bring these African women who may have some different kind of analysis based on not really being introduced to African internationalism, is to bring them close to ANWO so that we can help them understand it a little bit better, because we recognize that there's a language barrier and some other kind of barriers, but we feel like we can build on that. And the other panel we had was When We Fight Together, We Win, which included other colonized women from Mexico, Philippines, and Palestine, who were also sharing the struggles that they were experiencing fighting colonialism. And then we had a panel that included African women who are in the party, um, called What Would a Liberated Africa Look Like? And, it was really incredible. These comrades, lead various aspects of the work in the party. And I thought it was really important for African women to see not only African women, I think that's kind of, superficial, but to hear African women really provide an analysis that's rooted in African internationalism and defines the work that we're doing, so that it's not just something where we show face, but that these are capable, competent African women who analyze and are dialecticians and can break down the work and transform it. And I think another aspect of the convention that I think was really memorable was the tour. Every time we come to St. Louis, we try to do a tour, right? But we had some new faces. We had some people here who had never been here before. And let me tell you, every single one of them was like, this is so amazing. They were so inspired. They want to go back and do this where they are. They want to come help with the projects that we have in St. Louis. And it was really engaging. And I think, more than any other place, people might have this this very startup sort of perspective on what they can do to transform the community. And it can be based on some Black capitalist sort of engagement, or understanding. But in St. Louis, this is a socialist project. This is a project that engages in creating opportunities for the community to be a part of it, but also benefits the community. And everything that we're doing is going back to the community. The houses that we're building, the basketball courts, the centers that we're organizing around, these are accessible to the entire community there. So I think just that tour, those panel discussions, and I think the whole convention was amazing. But if I was to pick out some things, I think those are some of the high points for me.
Uhuru. Uhuru, thank you. And I totally agree with you, having been there. And first of all, just for anybody who doesn't know, when President Yejide is talking about a tour, she's talking about a tour that's led by Deputy Chair Onizania Shatella of all of the projects of hands off of a Black Power blueprint that have been built within a walking area, and then there's one area that you have to drive to, but it's a very amazing thing to see. And it just, as people have said, every time you do it, it's like there's more and more and more. And it's very, very exciting. But I do think that the thing that's really clear, and also what you're saying about the highlights of first of all, African women from US, African women from Africa, African woman from Brazil, but she lives in Europe, in Germany, and other African women around the world, the whole colonial question, and then the unity with these women who are in struggle for their people, for liberation of the Philippines, for Mexican liberation, Unión de Barrio. Just, it was, just, it's so unique. There is no other organization of women, period, that brings the colonial question and the African identity to this. So it's really, it's very, very exciting to see. And that's what makes it so dynamic and empowering to the members, but also to anybody that sees it. Like, this is what the future of liberated Africa looks like. This is it.
We fight for the Africa question all the time. I think it's really, the question of national identity has been something that the chairman has been putting out in his political reports. The question of the African nation is super important. So that national question helps us understand that even though I was born in the US, my situation is similar to an African woman born in Brazil or born in Colombia. And what we're experiencing that they may call racism or something else, there's a barrier that was caused because of this colonial question, this attack on Africa, the splitting of the entire African nation, and us relegated to these places around the world. And what we're experiencing as barriers are the same colonial questions. So, I think that's really important, and why we really wanted to try to bring that panel together and expect to really deepen our relationships with those sisters and comrades in those different places.
Yes, and just what you're saying, that the chairman has fought for so long for us to understand that it's not racism, it's not the ideas in somebody's head, but it is a real state power, the state of colonialism, the reality of it, which can be defeated, which is tangible and was created by human beings and can be overturned by the leadership of the African working class. And the chairman has, and you say actually as part of Impedum, but you echo the words of the chairman, there's no such thing as women in general. There's no such thing as women in general, which is something that, the white women's movement have tried to equalize this oppression of women and make it universal across the board in a very colonizer, colonialist way that liquidates the true contradictions that exist. And yes, I was just wondering if you could talk about that. I've heard you put out that statement often, and I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. When we first started saying there's no such thing as women in general, I think that was really hard for people to understand what we were talking about. But if you're a colonized African woman who has experienced life and then see, the attempts by white oppressor nation women to kind of utilize the struggles that we're experiencing to propel their struggle for equality within the oppressor nation, and you begin to understand it more and more. And so there's no such thing as women in general. Women of the oppressor nation experience life differently, has experienced history differently than women who have been colonized, period, point blank. And even though we have biological functions that are the same, whatever, like the colonial question defines how we move through life and what we experience now. So while colonial oppressor women, colonizer oppressor nation women were on the plantations or in the big houses, enjoying a life of privilege, right? African women were the maids, African women were the wet nurses, African women working in the field to ensure that they got everything that they needed because their husbands owned us, and they were the ones who used their own sisters, their own siblings who were born out of colonial rape as
Mhm.
you know, they benefited from this as well. So there's, you know, when we look at oppressor nation white women and really look at how they experience history, there's you know, and how, you know, yeah, they might experience contradictions because, you know, they were born out of a system of patriarchy that originated that existed in Europe for a very, very, very long time before they spread it throughout the world using colonialism, is still not the same. African women experience oppression as a result of being a part of a colonial dominated nation. And the issues that we experience underneath that oppression are exacerbated by the colonialism in of itself. So things like patriarchal oppression, things like that, are results of that. And we've seen throughout history where African women have separated themselves from these generalities of white women. You know, they would create Black feminism or womanism or something else that kind of um, identified the problematic all women are the same narrative to define the struggles that African women experience that oppressive nation white women just don't experience. And so this has been, and you know, if you read books from long in the past, I mean, I read Sojourner Truth. You know, you read, you know, all these narratives around slave narratives. You read, you know, things that kind of describe the situation for African people and white people, and particularly the Sojourner Truth book. You start to really see, like, I know we're going to talk about that a little more, but you start to really see the dynamics, like the dynamics of white women taking over. Or using, not taking, using, taking over abolition, number one, and then using the stories of African people who are trying to get free to compel their issues forward so that they can get a bigger slice of the loot. It's really disgusting, and we should not be surprised. We, you know, that throughout history we see this recur over and over and over again because their position within the colonizer nation allows them to continue to be oppressive and dominate and exploit colonized people and use them and use us in whatever way they see fit. And more African women and other colonized women are rejecting it loud and clear.
Yes, yes, Uhuru. And I mean, I think I read once a while ago that they did a study, and the main use of, quote, affirmative action in the past was done by the white women's movement, was used by the white women's movement, not by African people,
Right.
you know. So just an example, to get the resources and anything at the expense of the African liberation movement has been so real. And, you know, it's very clear. And we wanted to read a statement that it had been sent to us by members of the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition, which we are going to talk about the Hands Off Uhuru struggle a little bit later. But the coalition has members that both from Palestinian organizations and organizations of Arab people in support of the right of Palestinian people to the anti-colonial, to, you know, to have their land, basically, that Palestine belongs to Palestinian people, and against Israeli colonialism, US-backed Israeli colonialism. And this statement was sent to us by Mona Albayami and Nancy Mansour, both members of Hands Off Uhuru. And it talks about, it's interesting because it shows the relationship of an anti-colonial struggle, of women in an anti-colonial struggle, whether in occupied Palestine or, you know, African women inside the borders of the United States or in Africa, and just the unity of that. So Comrade Ali is going to read that, and then we'll just comment on it a little bit.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny and President Yejide. Yeah, this is such a powerful statement because it really shows what you were just talking about, the absolute opportunism of white feminism and intervention and trying to control the anti-colonial struggle. And it's really powerful. It says, no feminist struggle without Gaza. 5 months into the ongoing genocidal assault on the Gaza Strip and 76 years of settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing in Palestine, the massacres carried out in Gaza by the Zionist killing machine have not stopped, sparing no effort in cutting off all lifelines from Palestinians in Gaza, who've been under siege by Israel and its allies for 17 years, forsaken and facing the horrors of colonial extermination and dispossession. Palestinians in Gaza are now also undergoing the systematic targeting of all forms of life, Palestinian lives, hospitals, schools, and the already dilapidated infrastructure of the Strip have come under Zionist barbaric attacks as the entire world watches live broadcasts of bombs weighing thousands of tons, funded by taxpayer money, dropped on our people in Gaza. On the 8th of March, International Women's Day, we affirm that the Zionist killing machine discerns no difference between man and woman, adult and child. It is predicated on erasure and is threatened by the mere existence of Palestinians, especially those in Gaza, whose bodies are sites of resistance against decades of settler colonial violence. Yeah. We stand here for the women and men of Gaza, for the children and youth of Gaza, for our grandmothers and grandfathers, the custodians of our history and memory, and for all those who have made Gaza a popular cradle for its valiant resistance. We stand for the bricks, the sea, the streets, the trees. We stand for memories of the past as well as hopes for the future that make Gaza our home. Almost every day now, we see Palestinian women giving birth in unsafe conditions, mothers killed with unborn babies in their wombs, children who have lost their entire families, men searching for loved ones under the rubble with their bare hands, and doctors forced to amputate limbs of their own children on a table in a house surrounded by tanks and snipers, lacking any medical equipment. Hundreds of thousands of our people in the northern part of the Gaza Strip are besieged, facing a systematic starvation policy as a tool of the genocidal war waged by the Zionist entity, aiming to break the resilience of an oppressed and proud people. As for those of our elders who survived the Nakba of 1948, they once again find themselves under a brutal campaign of slaughter and forced displacement. We, the women of Gaza, refuse to have feminist ideals weaponized in service of colonial agendas and for the justification of a genocidal assault. We categorically reject exploitative rhetoric of imperial feminism that uses societal violence Palestinian women are subjected to in order to whitewash Israeli violations and brutalization of the bodies of Palestinian women and men. We reject the weaponization of the suffering of Palestinian women within the patriarchal structures of their society to further vilify and dehumanize Palestinian men. Since the onslaught of the genocide, we have seen mainstream media outlets and self-proclaimed feminist groups rush to adopt Zionist propaganda to demonize Palestinian resistance and legitimize our extermination. Meanwhile, as Zionist soldiers violate the most intimate spaces of Palestinian women and objectify our beings in gruesome ways, these same groups remain silent and complicit. In a flagrant display of colonial misogyny, Israeli soldiers have been flaunting clips of themselves, rummaging through and parading lingerie of forcibly displaced Palestinian women. As an integral part of the colonial apparatus, its structure, function, and practice, sexual violence against Palestinian women is conveniently overlooked. Testimonies of rape, sexual assault, and brutal torture that Palestinian women kidnapped from the Gaza Strip have endured under Israeli detention have not elicited recognition or solidarity from liberal feminist institutions. Palestinian women have experienced sexual harassment and threats of raping their family members. They had dogs unleashed on them, have been stripped naked, and were deprived of food and access to restrooms for days. We demand immediate action to fight all oppressive structures that enable these brutal crimes. No genocide is feminist. Even an Israeli female soldiers taking selfies on the rubble of our destroyed homes try to tell you otherwise. We are not all in the same trench. Those who have been chosen to manufacture consent for genocide, whether directly making bombs or passing policies for the bombs to fall, do not belong to our feminist anti-colonial struggle. Their feminism can only be seen as an extension of the ruling class, driven solely by their shared interests. Today, we also affirm our rejection of the dehumanization of Palestinian men and the perpetuation of racist and colonial tropes about the colonized. We've seen these Orientalist depictions of inherently violent brown men and helplessly passive brown women be used as a pretext for invasion and conquest, as seen in Afghanistan and Iraq. Feminist and anti-colonial struggles in Palestine are intertwined, and we reject the hijacking of our movement to serve Zionist propaganda. No one is free until we're all free. No future without Gaza. No feminist struggle without Gaza. We refuse to reduce the massacred Palestinians to mere numbers, recounted in a cursory manner that detracts from our humanity. Even the staggering statistics we see on the news are inaccurate in light of the testimonies from people on the ground, as well as Palestinian journalists and medical officials regarding thousands of missing individuals, those who were hastily buried and others who remain under the rubble undocumented. The squares, sidewalks, schools, and hospitals of Gaza have all become mass graves. If we were to narrate the daily suffering of our people in this genocide, we would need endless speeches and an eternity of pain. Compiling an archive of our people's losses would not suffice. The cries of Heinz's mother are but a drop in the ocean of Palestinian mothers' cries, and the last farewell of Rima's grandfather to his, quote, soul of the soul is merely a glimpse of thousands of other farewells made in hospital corridors, wrecked homes, and silent prayers. It pains us that those under extermination are compelled to point their cameras toward the bodies of their loved ones in moments of farewell and sorrow. Moments that are meant to be sacred have been desecrated for you. Palestinians document them to, quote, prove that all of this is indeed happening. Those who've lost their loved ones have been deprived of the right to mourn and to honor their bodies with proper burial, as the privacy of farewell has been violated. The least those in solidarity can do is not turn these images into commodities of performative sorrow, but mobilize our anger and grief into political action. We reject the romanticization of Palestinian suffering under genocide, as they are left with no choice but to try to survive. The entire world has seen Palestinian women doctors risking their lives to save the wounded, women gathering firewood to cook for their families amidst Israel's continued blockade of cooking gas, displaced women baking bread in makeshift tents, and our mothers in North Gaza making bread from animal feed amidst the scarcity of aid and the farcical stunts of aid drops. You've seen mothers making diapers under a severe shortage of supplies, the Palestinian women volunteering to give lessons to displaced children following the Zionist systematic targeting of schools and education in Gaza. This should not invoke your admiration, but rather shame. The shame of everyone's failure to end this suffering, the shame of complicity in the genocide of our people, and the shame of forcing our women to endure this torment to survive. In our struggle for Palestinian liberation and our right to self-determination, we are fully aware that our destinies are interwoven with our oppressed siblings over the globe, from Sudan and Congo, Haiti and Tigray, Kashmir and Western Sahara, to Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Iraq. This is the opposition to the capitalist, imperialist, colonial regimes and their brutality and their attempts to normalize and fund Zionist savagery, trying to make a lesson out of Gaza for all the wretched of the earth who choose the path of resistance. We must recognize today that colonial powers will claim more lives, both outside and inside Palestine, unless we act immediately and by all available means to stop the genocide, lift the siege, and dismantle the colonial project in the region. As we've asserted before, we reiterate our destinies are intertwined. Mobilize revolutionary forces and escalate work for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, lifting the siege on the Gaza Strip and opening the Rafah border permanently and unconditionally, as it is the only passage for the movement of people. End businesses that make profit off Palestinian suffering. This includes holding to account those who have been making Palestinians who want to leave Gaza pay absurd amounts to a private company affiliated with the Egyptian regime, which has been collaborating with Israel in its blockade of the Gaza Strip for 17 years. The immediate return of those who were forcibly displaced all over the Gaza Strip to their homes. The immediate release of all detainees who were abducted by the Zionist forces from the Gaza Strip, ending arms sales to the Zionist entity. Boycott Israeli products and divest from firms that are partnered with the occupation, holding all those complicit in the genocidal war accountable, including politicians, media platforms, and international organizations, rejecting the imposition of political discussions while Palestinians continue to be slaughtered in their hundreds every day. Engaging in debates under the fire of genocidal assault on the Gaza Strip will only prolong the suffering of its people. Ceasefire now, glory to the resistance. Long live our international struggle. Down with the colonial and tyrannical regimes, down with the prisons, down with the borders, down with capitalism, down with imperialism. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Oh.
Uhuru. Powerful. And it ends by saying no one is free until we all are free. No future without Gaza, no feminist struggle without Gaza.
Uhuru.
So very, very powerful statement. Really the anti-colonial statement of a national liberation struggle of the women of Palestine. And just, we're struck by the colonial nature of that and similarity to the kind of stand that the African National Women's Organization and the party represent. So just wondered, if you had any comments on that, President Yejide.
Uhuru, of course I do. First of all, this is a really, really powerful statement. I would imagine that more and more colonized women will be pushing out statements like this, not only in support of the resistance in Palestine, but to recognize their own contradictions colonial contradictions that they're fighting against. And I think that's really incredible. I wrote down some things that I thought were really, I think the whole thing is very indicative and similar to the question of the anti-colonial struggle that African people are waging, and the tactics and strategies that the imperialists use to justify intervention, and also that justified intervention in war, but also destroying more and more women's lives, people's lives. So, for example, using patriarchy or the internal contradiction of patriarchy within colonial society that was imposed on colonized people by the colonizer as the basis to justify invasion, war, destruction. So if men, supposedly force Palestinian women to wear head wraps, which is what the narrative could be, then we're going to go in there and liberate African women from head wraps, and because these men are demonizing and violent. And I just really, when that part of the piece was being read, I was, looking at how they justify the same thing in Africa, in the rest of the Middle East, where the primary purveyor of violence is not the imperialists, not the colonial aggressor, but the men who are also being slaughtered by the attacks that are being waged against the people. And the bombs don't make a discernment between women, men, and children. The bombs drop And the imperialists have their own objective, which is to wipe out any resistance to its aggression. And so, really pulling that out, because that's really something that I think that we have to do more and more of for African women to really understand that it's not just some corrupt leader or this army is better, it's worse than this army, and that's why we're experiencing violence, but that the whole colonial question is what's coming up here, and that African men who also experience an excessive amounts of violence and against them in the U.S. and Africa and the Caribbean, everywhere, that these are not the greatest threat to African women. It's the colonizer it's the colonial mode of production that's the greatest threat to African women. So that part of that piece was really important. And where they also talking about feminism, I would implore them to abandon that whole terminology for themselves and pick something else that more accurately describes the struggle that they are being engaged in, because what we've understand around feminism is a petty bourgeois philosophy that doesn't really bring us to the final question of really overturning our relationship to imperialism. And what these women and men and young people are engaged in is bigger than addressing a gender dynamic which feminism holds out. It's about obtaining power and gaining that power so that they can prevent the oppressor from doing all of these things that they have been doing, and really establishing the groundwork for a society that can be that all of the backward elements can be overturned. But right now they're engaged in a war for survival, and that the colonizer will continue to wage upon them because it creates crisis and destabilization and undermines the self-determination of the people. But the more that these comrades are putting out the struggle of Palestinian people, it brings forward this whole question, not just for Palestine. Palestine is bigger than Palestine. It brings this whole question out for everybody fighting for freedom, to overturn our relationship to the colonial oppression, and these valiant combatants who are engaged in a struggle with people who have the bigger guns, more powerful weapons, more resources, are bringing the U.S. to its heel, bringing Israel to its heel, and I'm here for it. And I think also really the question of not relegating it to a feminist question, but keeping it in the realm of anti-colonialism will help people understand that the benefit of keeping this war ongoing is not just like you have to appeal to the hearts and minds of U.S. imperialism or Israeli Zionism. Like you have to, like the end goal is to just destroy them. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
so it's not like if we were able to win a few lawmakers to say, oh, stop the ceasefire. Like, I think what we have to win all the time is that colonialism must be destroyed. The ceasefire is just one step in the direction of really destroying a whole entire relationship that Palestine is experiencing, and also setting an example for other people who are fighting against colonialism. I think, they're gonna win either way. So,
Yes, thank you for that. And, I just think that the colonial question, so clear, the whole question as you address the colonial mode of production, that it makes it really clear in this statement, but also in the front of the African National Women's Organization, the struggle of African women versus white feminism, which is colonizer politics, which
right.
is protecting the colonial system. And that for colonized women, this struggle, the struggle of the women as part of the whole nation, is a struggle of life and death of the whole people. For white women, it's a thing of advancement. It's something to advance the position of white women sitting on the pedestal of you know, the backs of African people and oppressed and colonized peoples. So, you know, I think it's very clear in that statement. And, you know, just what you have been saying, or you say in this brilliant political report to the convention that you just had, that, you know, you're talking about the recognition of the nation, of the African nation, and the need for this national identity of African women, like you're saying. And I think you have addressed this, but I think that it's incredibly clear, and what distinguishes African National Women's Organization from anything else. And yeah, so just, do you have any, just want you to comment on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that, you know, we say that we are the only anti-imperialist, anti-colonial African women's organization, membership organization in the world. Now, I don't know the whole world, but I'm very confident on this statement because I haven't seen anything come out from any other African women's organization or group that would address the whole colonial question. And, you know, for us, it's really important because this question of the, you know, the African nation is really important because people tend to think that because you were born somewhere else or you experience a different kind of culture, that somehow you're different. Like the chairman says, like, you know, you were picked up on a boat in Africa and you were when you were African when you came on a boat, you were African when you get off the boat, you know. And in the continent of Africa, there's 54 different colonies, right? On the continent of Africa, there's thousands of different iterations of culture. There's thousands of languages. So this idea that because someone speaks a different language or grew up in a different, born in a different place, makes you a different African than somebody who was born in the continent of Africa is ridiculous. And so when we look at the question of, and I think what ANWO does and the party does, because obviously, you know, we get leadership from the party, is really, you know, instills this confidence in African people to just say, you're African, number one, and that the things that we're experiencing are a part of a political assault, political, economic, social assault against African people for the benefit of the colonizer. And that in order for us to stop experiencing some of the things that we heard during the convention, which was like, you know, colorism and poverty and all kinds of things, the way that we overturn that is really stop struggling to just overturn the poverty, because you're not going to be able to do that within a system that wants you to be poor. You know, you're not going to be able to overturn racism and colorism within a system that sends you messages every single day to deepen that contradiction and make that the primary thing that you're going to be arguing about. You're not going to be able to overturn so-called patriarchy within a system that's patriarchal. You're just not going to do that. And so the ultimate struggle that we have to make as African women, despite the fact that we may be living in different places, may experiencing some different iteration of the results of colonialism, is that really understanding the question of power. Because when we get out of the weeds of like race, all the things that we just talked about, and we talk about power, then we start to have a different conversation. Then you start like, because otherwise you're just trying to get the lawmakers to recognize you as a human being. And the lawmakers still have power, and the lawmakers are still the colonial state. And so we're not interested in allowing them to make determinations over our life. And Chairman says it best. He said, you should be jealous of somebody who would dare have power over you. You should be so jealous you want to take it from them. And so that you can have power and control over your own life. And so that's what we're talking about, is this question of power. African women have to be looking at the question of power and how we can contribute to the development of African working class power to overturn the relationship that we have in it. And if we continue to say that we're different from one another because we live in different places, I mean, that's just, you know, deepening the colonial contradiction, as opposed to saying these are the ways that we are similar and these are the ways that we can work together, you know, to overturn this relationship that we both are experiencing, even whether you're in Brazil, Colombia, Jamaica, United States, Congo, wherever. and we can work together to overturn these things and create our own narrative to deal with it. So that's why the statement that we just read was so powerful, because that's what ANWO is building up to, is creating opportunities for these African women who may not have even understood colonialism up until this point to actually come out together and say something as significant as that.
It was, I mean, that is what makes ANWO completely unique and what made it so dynamic to see just this unity. I mean, it was beautiful to see, and it really unleashes, like you're saying, the national question for the colonized to recognize, because part of colonialism inside the borders of the United States is to pretend there isn't colonialism inside the United States, and to say that African people are Americans.
Yeah.
Clearly it's been the party to say, what are you talking about? The First Amendment isn't even for African people. It's just, everything is at the expense of African people. And it is like the elephant in the room that nobody really talks about, but everybody knows it's right. It's so obvious. And when that is unleashed, it is beautiful. It's liberating for white people too, because it lets us see our relationship and be honest about it, that we have lived at the expense of African people. We, white women, have done hideous, terror and just absolute violence against African women in so many ways, and African men. And to begin to see that we can have a principled relationship under the leadership of the African Revolution and be part of reparations, which is returning the resources, but returning everything that's stolen, just turning over the power, because we don't, we don't want to perpetuate, I should say, the power of colonialism, of the colonizer. We want to see this new world that will be led by the African Revolution. So it's very dynamic for white people too, because it lets us see how we can be part of the future. Just wanted to say that. And, I just really, really appreciate all of the analysis that you're giving us. And we have a few more questions and discussion here. And I just wanted to talk about the African working class nature of the African National Women's Organization, something you did talk about. And, to recognize, even very simplistically, that African women make 1 cent for every dollar that white women make, and just the conditions, which this doesn't even begin to express and describe the very brutal conditions that African working class women and men face inside the borders of the United States in this colonialism that's right here. So
yes.
I mean, just a comment. I mean, I know that's not exactly a question, but I'm just saying,
But yeah, I think, one thing that colonial propaganda does show is African women, the African petty bourgeoisie as the prime example. We throw out so many, and I address it in the political report, throw out things like Black girl magic and Black excellence as or the Black women saved the Democratic election, making Joe Biden win the presidential election 4 years ago, and putting out this idea that we are, full-fledged Americans, right? It's particularly Black women, because we're always thrown in juxtaposition to Black men who ain't doing enough and need to work hard enough and things like that. And but the conditions of African working class women is real. Like, the majority of women who are living in this country are not the African petty bourgeoisie, and even if they are, they're still African petty bourgeoisie still experience the same contradiction that bourgeois white women of the oppressor nation. Getting white women make more than all other women and colonized men.
Right.
You know, they always try to put the women on women, like women, and women need to come together because we need to make more money. When white women make more than my husband, make more than me, make more than the sister from Palestine, make more than the Filipino woman. She makes
Mhm.
more than everybody. She's right there next to her man in the colonial oppressive nation making
Right.
these resources. And Black women, African women, um, are in the workforce, despite what you may see, are in the workforce, are forced into the workforce, number one, at higher rates than any other woman, right? But also, if she has a child, she's even more hyper exploited within the workforce within the United States, because now, because of the colonial contradiction where if you have a man as a partner, like there's men who are disappeared from entire communities who may be in jail, in prison, or killed off because of the colonial contradiction. So African women now have to take on the brunt and responsibility of taking care of the family financially and otherwise. So now you're forced into the workforce to try to keep everything afloat and take care of children. So women who have children are more locked in to this cycle of exploitation because of all the contradictions that they have to try to overturn with the resources that we're getting, which, by the way, is not very much, right? And the women who don't have children who are still locked into that. You might be an office worker, because I really want to define like working class women, because you are working class if you in an office and you on a computer all day and that's the thing that's getting you by. You still the African working class, and you're still the African working class if you work at a fast food restaurant. This defined by who has power over you and what you're engaged in terms of the work. But like the overall um, numbers of African working class women means that African working class women are being forced into the labor force at higher rates than other women and are super hyper exploited within this workforce as well in the U.S. and anywhere else. I mean, we're talking U.S. numbers because it's really hard to define some of the numbers in other places that may not get statistics from everything. We can see what African women on the continent of Africa and the Caribbean and things like that are, working just as hard just to, make society function, their society function, because, all of the ease of that colonialism has taken away is making it harder for us to accomplish just the very basic things or to get the resources that we need in order to take care of ourselves, our children, and our
Uhuru.
Uhuru, President Yejide, this is such a powerful discussion,
Yes,
such
it
an
is.
important analysis that the African People's Socialist Party and ANWO, have, because, and it is so important for us in the white community to really understand it, because, I mean, I know a lot of us came into the solidarity movement as feminists, from the perspective
Mhm.
of, wanting more rights as women and seeing how horrendous this system is, even to white women sometimes. But, the analysis that you're putting out makes it so clear that the white movement, the white women's movement, has always really just tried to build itself off the backs of African people and the powerful struggle led by the African working class, like even, the anti-abolition movement. I mean, yeah, the abolitionist movement, the African people led to overturn colonial slavery. That was what the white women's suffragist movement modeled itself after, or whatever, borrowed the leadership from, but then attacked African women and men in that movement, like would be just like slandering African men and saying, well, if we're going to be oppressed by men, at least it's going to be by white men, not African men, like some of the leaders of that movement said. And white women in the suffragist movement were just like, it was a white movement. They even attacked African women, pushed them out of it, and wouldn't let them participate in it. Some even had openly had African women as servants and stuff. And, it's just, and then the white women's movement, as Chairwoman Penny said earlier, just built itself off in the 70s, built itself off the Black Power movement. So it was like the women, women's power. What was it called? The women's liberation movement, of the African liberation movement. It's just like, so I just want you to elaborate a little bit on that, maybe, because we, as Chairman Penny said, we have a stake in this revolution, not in building a white rights movement. And we have to really come to
Right.
grips with that and understand our history and who we are in the world. And who are,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was really I did a piece called I think it was historic. I think it was idealism versus dialectical materialism, where I talk about the lives of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. And many people don't really understand or recognize that these women existed at the same time. Sojourner was older than Harriet at the time, but these women existed at the same time. And I draw a correlation between the two because uh, here we have like Sojourner Truth, who, and I'm saying these two women because they were around in the time of the suffragist movement and the women's movement and the transition from um, abolition to women's rights and other kinds of things that will allow for white women to, as the chairman says, get more of the loot that the men
Right.
were holding on to. So at the time, like, white women, experienced patriarchy for thousands of years, and when the white people came and colonized and settled in this land, they brought the patriarchy with them, and they are now using the righteous resistance of African people. They were then using the righteous resistance of African people, the stories of African people who were experienced the most incredible amounts of violence, the conditions that African people were experiencing both in the South, the so-called U.S. South, the North, as the impetus for them to then launch themselves. Like, see, all this injustice is happening. To now launch this campaign to get white women the rights that they need, because there was a lot of social transformation that was happening at the time, and they just decided to dump themselves in there to get that done. And they used African people, they used Frederick Douglass, they used Harriet Tubman, they used Sojourner Truth and people like the narratives of slave people. One thing that I can say too is that there's this piece called "I Ain't a Woman," Ain't I a Woman, written by that's documented a speech that Sojourner Truth supposedly had given, but it's in a Southern dialect. And they did that because Sojourner Truth was not from the South. She was born and raised in New York City, New York State. She was her first language is, I think, Dutch or German, and she was a Northerner, so to speak, right? So she didn't have a Southern accent or a Southern dialect. But this piece that they wrote was "Ain't I a Woman," and they wrote it, and this is a propaganda piece used by the abolitionists, the white abolitionists, to make the case for the ending the slavery in the South, because they didn't want to also just recognize that this slavery was also happening in the North, and there were also people who were experiencing the same kinds of violence and horror, and so the white women's movement, the suffragist movement, all of that, really, again, exploited African workers and exploited the relationships, the colonial contradictions that existed because of colonialism, of course, within the African community, to try to get African women to side with them more than they would African men who they worked side by side with, who they experienced the same contradictions with. And in the Sojourner book, you would see that Sojourner, without wanting to, I believe, just based on her language, she's very forgiving in a certain kind of way, laid out all of these examples of white women and their violence toward her, white people and their violence toward her family, and things like that. Stuff like, I asked this white woman who was nice to me, who had been, somebody that I worked for, to help me. And she said, well, no, because when her son was shipped down south, and the white woman was like, no, I can't do anything for you. These are the opportunities that, even though she was charity, he gave charity and stuff like that, they still sat on the pedestal and did not do much to ensure the support that African people needed to free ourselves at that moment. So like this, the white women's movement has always used, and we even saw with the women's march. I always call it the white women's march right now. The women's march, where they use all these on the stage colonized women, colonized people as the way to propel their issue with when the whole white women's march committee was like one white trans woman and another trans woman, and then the rest were African and Palestinian and stuff like that. And they used these issues that were pervasive and deep in the colonized communities to say these are the reasons why we need to, have this women's march. It's insidious, and I think if we were to just look at the relationship that white women of the oppressed nation has had with colonized women, we'd be able to really track it. But that's what we're doing right now, to kind of open up and expose, the exploitation that we have experienced, and that white women are now claiming, like comrades like yourself, who are, saying this is part of the history. And Penny, you wrote a book, A Culture of Violence, that documents, documents all of this, and I think that's really, really important to like have honest anti-colonial discussions, not hiding from it as white people, but engaging in real discussion that will allow oneself to become part of history in a good way, to transform relationships of power, as opposed to like holding on to this colonial title.
Uhuru. Yes, I really appreciate that and unite with that. And I think that is what white women have to face. I mean, first of all, like what you're saying, that white women looked at not the conditions of the enslaved African, but at the resistance, and was like, whoa, we've got to, we have contradiction, we need to be doing this, kind of thing. This is, it's like, we're white, we're supposed to be leading this resistance struggle, fighting for our rights. And, it was really, while wanting to maintain the whole system of colonial enslavement and, just the opportunism of that, which has continued. And, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about how the white women's movement used Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. And I certainly thought or considered that Sojourner Truth was making a struggle with white women. I don't know if maybe I'm not right, but when she was saying, look at me, I've plowed, I've planted and, gathered into barns, and no man could, I do the work, kind of thing, that I saw that as a struggle. And maybe that's not how.
No, that is a struggle. That is a struggle, and I thought just the tone of Sojourner in that biography that I wrote seemed more passive than aggressive, but I felt like she had a style toward how she struggled, right?
Yeah.
And that style was, she was, the speech that we're referring to is Ain't I a Woman, right? She was asked to be a part of or speak at this women's convention in New York, and she's they brought her in because they wanted to learn more about what struggle for women is like. I don't know if they saw themselves in her struggle, which of course she couldn't, but what she did here was say, y'all not like me. y'all didn't have to plow no fields. Look at my arms. Y'all didn't have to see all your children sold into slavery. Y'all didn't have to, you're not treated like a mule on the street, right, as opposed to a woman, like, so I felt like there's a different kind of way that she struggled, and I think those women didn't, I don't know, they clapped and stuff, so I don't know if they got it, but like,
I know.
But like she was I felt like, and people, feminists claim this speech as some sort of thing that projects the work of like the struggle of women. Like, this is African colonial, anti-colonial struggle as encapsulated in what Sojourner was saying. This is not a women's issue. This is not like some first feminist piece that existed in the world. This is an African colonized woman explaining to y'all what she is experiencing because of colonialism. And it ain't the same women who she talking to. You know what I mean? So it is a piece that I believe is very important to study as a resistance piece, and to really like pick apart, because I do believe it was also a struggle. Like she was struggling with them, the opportunism that they were showing.
Uhuru, yes, thank you for that. And, you were talking about an article, the article that you were talking about that you wrote was in the Burning Spear, correct?
Yes.
And would you be able to put a link to that if you have it, I don't know, in the chat? Because yeah, I remember reading it. I want to go back and read it again. It was very powerful. I think it was a few years ago that it was in the Burning Spear. But I wanted to also, yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
I will find it, but if it's not on,
oh,
here it is. I see it. I found it.
Oh wow! Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, I was like, if it's not on the website, then I'm gonna put it in the I have a document in Google Drive that I would share, but there it is.
Maybe somebody else could find it. So it's in the Jesse did it. Thank you, Conrad. Okay. Thank you. And yeah, I really want to call on everybody to read it. And like I said, I want to read it again. And just summing up that white women cannot fight for our rights at the expense of African people. Yeah. Or the feminists, like the chairman said, the feminist movement just becomes another white rights movement. It's just perpetuating colonialism. And we talked about this a little bit before, Comrade Ali talked about it, but in the 1960s, white women created the white women's movement based on the example of the African liberation movement. Again, just like in the previous period of abolition and white women's movement, the struggle against the colonial enslavement of African people and white women tailing on that, but because we're the colonizers controlling it and attempting to contain it within definition of the white women's movement. And just the whole question of white women as the colonizer projecting the worldview of the colonizer onto the struggles of colonized women. That has been the age old. That's what's being addressed in the Palestinian women's struggle, and certainly in the struggles that the party has made and African National Women's Organization makes against white feminists. Just making that comment, but do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think part of what we're going to see now, I think it's going to be real hard for white feminism to exist in this world after moving forward. It's destroyed in my view. Like there's nothing that they can do to justify. Like there's a lot of challenges to every single imperialist trope and narrative that feminists will put forward for the agenda of colonial modal production. And I think even this question, but there have been attempts, right? Like there's this intersectionality that allows white women to thrive inside of colonial contradictions. Right. African women came up with that, but it allows white women to thrive inside of the colonial contradictions by piling on, the things that they may experience as a contradiction, whether it be gay, lesbian, handicap, mental health, or something. But this question of colonialism doesn't engage in like these symptoms of colonialism, if that makes sense. Like it takes us out of the weeds and it starts to talk about power. Who is causing the contradiction? Who is causing the 100 contradictions that intersectionalism is talking about? What is causing that?
Yes.
And instead of dealing with the hundreds of contradictions that you cannot deal with underneath an oppressive, exploitative, opportunistic system, you start to think about, how do I destroy that overarching thing? And white feminism, based on this valiant struggle of the Palestinian resistance movement and other organizations representing other groups recognizing the colonial question, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for white feminism. They're going to have to, and I anticipate that they're going to try to change their strategy like they always do.
Yes.
Right.
So right.
You know, but the way that white feminism has been destroyed
Yes, it
based on this
has.
colonial struggle. Yeah, it's just been destroyed. It's been destroyed, and there's no way that they can come back unless it changes its stripes and
Yeah.
do something else.
Totally
Yeah, which I'm
unite.
sure is working on it right now.
Yeah, I mean, the existence of ANWO, the existence of, you know, the whole emergence on the front of the whole world, you know, of the struggle, the anti-colonial struggle is
Yeah.
the dominant question, defeating the colonial mode of production, as you're saying, and white opportunist feminism in every form. It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful new period, and really want to salute you for you know, just being at the forefront of that with building the African National Women's Organization. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize we were so late, but this has been amazing.
Mhm.
And you know, we do have to wrap up, but President Yejide, and this has been so great. And I think we'll hopefully have time for at least a couple of questions if people have that. But just quickly, can you tell us about the plans of the African National Women's Organization for this upcoming period? I know you're going to be moving your headquarters here to St. Louis, so just tell us a little bit about what is coming up.
I'll try to be brief. So we are.
I know you have a lot.
We have an ANWO headquarters that that the African People's Education and Defense Fund gifted us a building that we have the privilege of fixing up and rehabilitating. So in the next period, we're going to be focused highly on developing that project and creating a community center similar to the Hoover House in St. Louis and the Solidarity Center to really facilitate and be a resource to African women who are struggling against contradictions in St. Louis and around the world. So we encourage everybody to check in on our email list and to find out more, follow us on social media and stuff like that. And then we are also going to be facilitating the One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market also in St. Louis, which starts in June, and as a fundraiser, but also the way they build community amongst working class people, and build our capacity too, really there to address some of the contradictions. There's a lot of work that is happening in the community there beyond just ANWO's objectives, but our objective is to build mass resistance on the ground with these tools. In addition to that, ANWO is continuing on our campaigns around CPS. We have the Black Mothers March that's coming up in May, which is a anti-colonial response to the family policing system. People typically call it CPS, Child Protective Services. And we are also, I forgot, there was one other, we launched it, we're going to be more involved in the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, which is fight back to prevent the U.S. government from locking up Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And then we also launched an international campaign called African Women and Girls Against Colonialism, which is primarily going to be content based and activity based, but we anticipate changing the narrative. Just like the UN has the year of the woman, we're about to have the year of African women and girls against colonialism,
Right.
and putting out various content and events to forward that narrative, the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, African internationalist analysis for African women.
Guru, wow, what an agenda for the coming year. I mean, that is so exciting. And I
I'm
know
tired
it's
just thinking about it.
wow. Yes, well, that is part of changing the world. And, you know, it's really impactful. It's really, really just incredibly important front of the African Revolution and the African People's Socialist Party. But don't forget to talk about decolonize and also let people know where they can find out more. What is your website? They can also donate to
Absolutely.
ANWO there as well.
Yeah, so Decolonize is our economic development project. It's a subsidiary of the Black Star Industries, and we sell skin care and hair care products. So 100%, well, mostly natural, right? Like we work with indigenously rooted ingredients, and we create products that will be beneficial for hair, skin, and our products feature African revolutionaries in the packaging and quotes. So, grab some from decolonize.com, or when you see us out there vending on these streets, because we do in-person vending as well. And for anybody who wants to get in touch with ANWO, want to know how to support with us, you can always go to our website, anwouhuru.org. We are on all the socials, including TikTok. I had to resist that a little bit, but like we are ANWO Uhuru on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok. I believe we are ANWO Uhuru as well, but you can find us. And so that's where we post most of our content on a day-to-day basis. And then of course our website is informational about more about the work that we do, generally speaking. So ANWO Uhuru, and we have if people want to email us, they email us at info@anwouhuru.org. And if you go to our website, you'll see all that content information.
Uhuru, great. Thank you so much. And I see, Comrade, I think Virginia is putting it in the website, or somebody is in the chat. I mean, so yes, everybody go to, and I just really want to vouch for how amazing Decolonize is. These are homemade, handmade, right? This is not made in a factory. This is made by hand of the best ingredients, shea butter from Africa. I mean, wow, and very reasonable price and everything for the quality of this. I mean, if this were in Whole Foods, it would probably be, $50 or something. It's very amazing.
Or anywhere else, because we are outpriced on many different platforms, but we also do a butter called kupuasu, which is indigenous to the rainforest of South America. So we support African indigenous products, but also indigenous products from different places around the world that have been used for hundreds and thousands of years to help improve conditions of skin, hair, and other kinds of ailments.
Yes, wonderful products. Really, really love them. So just really want to urge everybody to go to anwouhuru.org and order your decolonized products. And there are many, many different kinds of things to get. So it's just been really exciting to have you on, President Yejide. It's very, very exciting. We're just going to, just say a little bit about APSC and the fundraiser that we're doing tonight. And I believe we're going to be able to have a few questions right after. So if you could just stay on a little bit longer. I know it's getting late on the East Coast. Really, really appreciate you being on. So I'm going to turn it over to Comrade Brendan, and then we'll be back.
Uhuru, thank you so much. So APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess, Secretary General Allison Haney, and of course our special guest, ANWO President Yejide Orunmila. This has been an absolutely incredible discussion, a lot of really fantastic insight and analysis. And I just want to let people know, we will be having that Q&A session shortly. So please submit any questions you have about, anything that we've talked about tonight in the Zoom Q&A feature or in the YouTube, Facebook chat. Before we get to that, I do want to take a few minutes to tell you how you can get involved in solidarity with the African people's struggle for liberation and support this kind of work. So the most important thing we can do to stand with all oppressed people is to join with the leadership of the African Revolution. That is what APSC was created to do. That is our objective. That's why the African People's Socialist Party, has built APSC. So tonight we have a goal to raise at least $1,000, which I am very confident we can do, for the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis, Missouri. So everybody, please go to apscuhuru.org/donate. USM, we take responsibility to keep this center open and flourishing with activities, a place where white people who are looking for solutions to the problems we see in the world can come and talk about what's happening. Events like this, through the African People's Socialist Party, that's the only place you can get this kind of analysis. So, come be a part of it, help build projects like the Black Power Blueprint and, support web events like this and build the Uhuru movement. So we hate the conditions we see and participate in. It's colonialism. So the African People's Socialist Party has given us the opportunity right here in St. Louis to be the front of the African Revolution behind enemy lines. And that is the work we do in the white community to build reparations. And the funds we raise in events like these go to the expenses of the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis, which is owned by the African People's Socialist Party, that APSC is responsible to develop and promote as a real, tangible public place in the world to build the movement for white people's reparations to the African community of St. Louis and beyond. It is the headquarters for the African People's Solidarity Committee in the US and around the world. And I do have, some slides we're going to cut to. So the Uhuru Solidarity Center is part of the Black Power Blueprint, which you can see some pictures there, which is building anti-colonial power in the hands of the African working class. So next slide. And there it is. So this is a photo of the Uhuru Solidarity Center from the front entrance on Gravois. Hundreds of people pass by this building daily. It is a very busy street, and have access to participating in this critical stand of reparations to African people under African leadership. Next slide. So in early 2022, the Solidarity Movement began hosting events at the center, such as volunteer actions, potluck, film nights, and political education studies. Next slide. Here is the main room. You walk in and you can see just this incredible wall of Uhuru Planet reparations, apparel, and other by Black Power products, which are displayed, including decolonized. There's some decolonized products out there as well. So next slide. The center's grand opening was held in June of 2022. I think that was actually one of the first events I ever came to. Really incredible grand opening. Next slide. And then in July of that year, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement organized Reparations Summer, a multi-week intensive, including presentations from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, studies and outreach that distributed thousands of pieces of literature in the white communities of St. Louis.
And which we're going to have again this
Yes, coming up this July, we will be doing it again. So, and then in July of that year, so shortly after, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, so shortly after the conclusion of this Reparations Summer project, so on July 29th, 2022, the FBI brutally raided 7 offices and homes of the Uhuru movement, including right where we are today, the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis. So next slide. Volunteers came out in the days and weeks following to help repair the damage caused by the FBI. They broke windows. I mean, just the damage was extensive. And the community came together to build back this important institution. So next slide. So the FBI attacks have not stopped the work of the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement. It is critical that we fund the Uhuru Solidarity Center. We have to ensure that it remains open as a resource open to the community, part of the Black Power blueprint, part of building economic and political power in the hands of the Black community. Next slide. This is a group photo with the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and some of the participants at this year's USM convention. It was very well attended. I mean, just an incredible event, absolutely incredible. And you can find
Great
videos,
picture.
of all the speakers and all the panels and everything on Uhuru Solidarity Movement's YouTube page. Next slide. So the work of the Solidarity Movement has continued to grow with ongoing outreach and fundraising. And there's a picture of some comrades at an outreach event. That looks like Tower Grove Park, one of the local parks here in St. Louis. Next slide. And then here are photos of comrades doing outreach. Oh, at the farmers market in Tower Grove, and then also at Pride. So next slide. And then USM organized the March for Reparations in St. Louis as part of the annual Days of Reparations to African People. This takes place every fall. We will be doing it again, and we're going to start building that very soon. So I believe the process has already started. So come get involved in that. So USM organized, and that was followed by a reparations teach-in at the Solidarity Center the next day. This year, the annual campaign will take the form of marches against genocide. Next slide, please. So the center is a vibrant organizing space hosting so many events, including part of the annual Giving Tuesday Reparations Telethon held in November, which is an incredible event to be a part of every year. There's also, we also had a Poets Against Genocide event this past February. There was an open house the evening before the USM convention, which the place was packed, and there was some really delicious pizza. And there's also monthly Uhuru Planet Volunteer Nights. Uhuru, and I believe that is the end of this section of slides. But I do just want to call on everyone again. The Solidarity Center is a vital resource, for everyone in the white community in St. Louis to come together to plan and organize events. We get so much work done here, and I think it is really crucial to the organizing process here in St. Louis, as well as building community outreach and fundraisers for reparations and solidarity with the Black liberation movement. We want to call on you to contribute to the work of APSC and to this center. Go to apscuhuru.org/donate. You can make a one-time contribution. You can also become a monthly sustainer like Michael, Virginia, Leah, and so many others who contribute every month. So I do want to give the update. There has already been $275 contributed.
Actually, 325.
Oh, 325.
Here.
Yes, that is accurate. That is accurate. And I do want to thank Maureen in Oakland for $50, Lisa in Minneapolis for $50. I chipped in $50 because I absolutely believe everything I've been saying up here. Leah in Minneapolis, $50. Thank you to Linda in Philadelphia, the $25 contribution. Raya in Chicago, $25. Sandy in Olympia, $25, as well as Chairwoman Penny Hess right here sitting at the table with me, $50 contribution. And then
I just donated 100, so I don't know if that doesn't show up.
Yes. So Secretary General Ali, $100. So I believe we're $75 short of being halfway. So we're Uhuru. I'm trying to keep up with everything. So that Uhuru, so Ruby, $25.
Yeah, a 450.
So we're at, yeah, so 450 has been contributed so far, and I just want to put it out there. Does anyone want to contribute the remaining $550? Is there anyone out there who wants to put that forward and really, show their commitment to reparations? Oh,
Chair.
Oh, wow.
ahoo. Ahuru, Deputy Chair,
$50.
$50 from Deputy Chair.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
That puts us at 500.
Ahuru, we're right
Halfway.
there. We're right
Halfway
there.
there.
So yeah, $500. You could, is there anybody out there who can contribute that $500 or become a monthly sustainer, which would be 30 a month, maybe? Somebody please do that math.
Right.
All right.
Okay, and yeah, thank you to everybody who has contributed so far. We're going to keep this going. We're going to reach the goal. We will keep announcing new contributions as we go. Who is that?
Janice,
All right.
25.
Sorry, Janice, $25 from St. Pete.
Uhuru.
Ahuru.
Thank you. Very exciting. So we're at 525, and I know.
We are
Great.
over halfway.
Yes.
So
let's get to our discussion.
yes, we'll go ahead. I do want to call, on anyone who's really taken the message to heart tonight. Another important way to take action. You can join the African People's Solidarity Committee. I just want to make sure we mention that.
Mhm.
So you can go to apscahuru.org/join and fill out the form. And somebody from the membership office will contact you within 24 hours and you can get started. So I do want to get into our discussion. Have we been updating the Q&A? Oh, and before that, I do want to shout out just where everybody's been attending from. We've got people online from Minneapolis, Louisville, Kentucky, of course, St. Louis. We've got a room full of people here in St. Louis, as well as tuning in from other parts of St. Louis. Washington, D.C., Oakland, California, San Diego, Uhuru, Lexington, Kentucky, Mesa, Arizona, Olympia, Washington, and I'm sure many other places. Have we been updating the chat questions? Uhuru, and yeah, and don't be shy, please. If you have any questions for the incredible panel that we've had on tonight, just put them in there and we will get to them. I did want to ask our comrades here, did you have anything you wanted to kind of put forward or mention?
Uhuru, we just really appreciate this interview with President Yejide. Thank you so much for being on after what an incredible weekend.
Yeah.
that you were, leading and just making happen in such a dynamic way, and all of the leadership of ANWO, who are amazing women, African women. We have no specific questions right now. Anybody here in the room have any questions?
We covered quite a bit.
Yeah.
We covered
It was
quite a
an
bit.
extensive discussion it was fantastic.
Oh.
Uhuru.
Yes, Comrade Jesse. Yes.
Uhuru, President Yejide, this is Jesse. Just really want to appreciate this event, and this has been a very powerful, amazing discussion. And I also just want to salute the ANWO convention. It was an honor to be there, and just congratulate you on what an incredible weekend it was, and reflective of the incredible organization that you've built as a front of the African People's Socialist Party. And I really appreciated the presentation that you gave about how ANWO is going to be putting forward the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. And my question is to see if you could talk a little bit more about that, the attack of, the FBI raids and the attack on the African People's Socialist Party as an attack on African women. And, just thinking about the fact that it, politically overall, that it was that, and also specifically with the fact that Deputy Chair Onizane Shatella was targeted, was handcuffed, was, had a drone nearly hit her in the face, and, was part of this brutal assault. And also Director Akile, who was targeted by the FBI. They broke into her car, and she was one of the people who was put as a, quote, unindicted co-conspirator. And the fact that, as it was mentioned, that the morning of the raids, there was a doula training of African women that was held at the Uhuru House that Dr. Aisha Fields presided over, and which was organized by Deputy Chair Ona. And just kind of thinking about those things, and the fact that they're attempting to imprison Chairman Omali Shatella, who has fought for the liberation of all African people, and including and especially African women, has always been so prominent in everything the chairman has always fought for. So there's a long question, but I just thought that was a really powerful component of the convention. And I was wondering if you could just say a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you, Comrade. I'm glad that you raised that. I think the African National Women's Organization has to recognize how insignificant the work that we have done so far to contribute to the Hands Off Uhuru campaign has been, and we want to rectify that. Hands Off Uhuru has been putting out amazing content, so it's hard to keep up sometimes, but we want to be able to contribute toward content, contribute toward messaging and narratives, and include in that all of the narratives that kind of gets pulled out, like the ones you just talked about Deputy Chair Akile, doula training, the Huwa Kulia that's being built in St. Louis, and the attack against a component of the party's work, which is the economic development work that Deputy Chair Onizane Shatella leads. And there has been specific targeted attack against those institutions that threaten the financial sustainability of them. And when we're talking about like really building an African independence workforce that is looking at creating re-entry programs for African women and men coming out of prisons. We look at the Huajiko Bakery, which the banks forced usage of the funds that would have contributed to or finishing out their project to pay off a mortgage that is also going to be used for re-entry programs for African women and men. I mean, it's really, really important to, and the doula program that you just mentioned as well. I think overall, without speaking about even just those specific things to the party and the work that we've been doing to really overturn our relationship and creating dual and containing powers, we're talking about the colonial law of First Amendment right to free speech, right? And this is something that's supposed to be afforded to every single person that's supposed to be a citizen of this country, and who just lives here. You're supposed to have this freedom, and this is one of the things that the United States hangs by a noose and carries around the entire world as something that they are that they are best at. You're supposed to struggle for the American dream, and the American dream, which is an actual nightmare for colonized people to attain here. So when we talk about this struggle that's being waged with the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, we're talking about, yes, our comrades, but we're talking about more than that. We're talking about fighting for the ability of African people and other colonized people to wage dissension with the United States government. We're talking about an anti-colonial struggle here that's being waged that increases the ability for African people to, voice our dissension from the US government. We are also talking about how it spreads to other elements of work. So for example, in the arrest CPS work that we are engaged in, which is us fighting against the CPS system, the family policing system, we encounter this as well. There's gag orders, there are things that prevent African women and families from talking about their cases. And so we anticipate that should the US federal government succeed in squashing the resistance that we have to this, or being successful with this this campaign against us, it's going to have a reverberating impact on all levels of so-called free speech in this country. And so when the chairman says he wants to put the U.S. government on trial, it's going to be magnificent because we're going to hold the United States government up to the world as not the purveyors of peace, which a lot of people around the world already know because they experience that they are not peaceful people when they land in their country and kill up all the people and rape and pillage and all these things. But despite that, people still have this idea that there is some sort of land of milk and honey, and you should be thankful that you can speak what you want to say, and that's not, what this case is showing us that that's not the case, right? And specific to African women, if you're talking about women, African women who are fighting to regain custody of their children, who are told that they can't talk about the issue, or who are policed, put in jail, gagged, ordered, and things like that. Just in this one little pocket of contradictions, we see that this question of freedom of speech is really being impacted too. We can't even imagine that there is like 100 different other contradictions where this question of speech and being able to say what we want to say can really, really have a deep and profound negative impact on African workers and colonized workers' ability to struggle against their oppression. So the Hands Off Uhuru campaign for us is something that we are going to be more intentional about, and we'll come together and create content and work with the Hands Off Uhuru committee and the rest of the Uhuru movement to really build for September 3rd court date in Tampa, Florida. So we really look forward to that.
Uhuru, really appreciate that response. That is really profound and correct. I unite with it. And I just want to say, and we will be announcing it again as we end this program, but there will be a very good, very dynamic, I believe, webinar, Hands Off Uhuru webinar this Saturday, March 30th at 3 p.m. on Eastern. So, and we will be discussing the case of the Uhuru 3. So people can register for that. Maybe we could put the registration for that in the link in the chat, and really looking forward to that. Of course, Chairman Omali Shatella, the attorneys, some of the attorneys will be on, and other guests as well. So that's going to be very, very powerful. Thank you for that response. And I just wanted to read some of the comments that comrades have put in the in our little script here. One is from YouTube from Mr. P. He said, "This is so good. Does the Uhuru movement still hold public events in the UK? If there's a mailing list, please let me know. Thanks." So it said that the chat moderator affirmed that this and referred him to info@apsc.uhuru.org and handsoffuhuru.org. And then Andy on YouTube says, "What an important discussion. I'm glad I found this channel." Uhuru, we're glad you found it.
Yeah.
And also on YouTube, Black No Cop Zone says, "Uhuru, hands off the Uhuru 3. Thank you, comrade." And comment on YouTube, shout outs from Shakura, Carlisle, and Robert. Uhuru. On Facebook, a comment from Chairman Omali Shatella. "Uhuru, a great event with an extraordinary leader." Uhuru, absolutely. A question on Facebook from Comrade Raya. "Could you speak to how historic the party's formation of APSC in 1976 is, concretely solving the what about the white people with African internationalism and the material basis of opportunism?" Well, just to say, absolutely, extremely historic. A first time, as you're saying, that the African liberation movement could answer the question what to do about the white people, recognizing what we've talked about a lot, what the chairman calls the colonial mode of production, that recognizes that we live in a colonial society. And the chairman said that, white people and African people experience the colonial mode of production, white people as the colonizers, which many of us don't want to be. We want to join we want to join the future. We want to join and rectify our relationship to African people and pay reparations. And that this is the first time that the colonial question has been solved. And the party has a correct relationship with the colonizers, putting them under the leadership of the anti-colonial movement. It's really liberating for white people. This is white people's liberation to be able to, you know, just, I can't even express what it means. And we, of course, talk about this a lot, and we will always in upcoming webinars and studies that we do. So I appreciate that question. And I want to call on everybody, other North Americans, as we say, to join the African People's Solidarity Committee, also the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and get organized. It's not enough just to talk about it or, you know, sit in your cafe, but discuss the fact that white people can be under the leadership of the African Revolution, but really get out there, do the work, which is so dynamic and really exciting in the white community, doing what we're supposed to do, organizing and meeting so many other wonderful North Americans who want to be on the forward side of history. And we're building all over the US in 117 cities, probably more now after the convention. Very, very, very exciting. So join this dynamic movement. And yeah, so, well, President Yejide, really want to thank you again. And just, do you have any parting words for us this evening?
Fist up, fight back, hands off to Uhuru 3, unity to reparations, Israel to Africa, and contribute to these comrades in this fundraising effort to liberate the Solidarity Center from the grips of banking, you know, so Uhuru comrades.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, we do have a few more donations here. Comrade Janice, $25. Comrade Lauren here in St. Louis, $50. Kara in Oakland, $50.
Great.
So that puts us at $625.
Right.
We just have $375 more for people to give, and you know,
and we've got a little bit more. We've got our announcements before closing out. I'll say, if you're still watching this, you know, please contribute. As long as we're on, go ahead and go to apscuhuru.org/donate and contribute, and let's try and reach our goal before the end of the webinar.
Uhuru.
And here are the announcements.
And thank you again, President Yejide.
Absolutely.
Powerful. Really a great event tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, comrades.
Salute your leadership.
Yeah.
Also, who is doing this thumbs down on your image?
Yeah, I think so. I think somebody's, is that a hostile force coming in? That needs to be taken
Okay.
over?
Oh.
No, it's like some AI thing they thought one of you.
Oh.
Was
we
it
have
whenever
negative
we
AI now?
raised our
We have-
fists for
Not only,
You raised your fist. It's not.
well, thumbs down to colonialism.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's kind of scary. Okay. We can fight humans, but
Smash colonial AI.
yeah, we have to get rid of this whole system that has this weird AI thing going on. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so first announcement, if we can go to that. Yes. So on Saturday, March 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition presents the case of the Uhuru 3, all out for the trial. A trial date has been set for September 3rd in Tampa, Florida, in this attack on the Black Liberation Movement. This web event will sum up the fight back against this test case, attempting to silence the anti-colonial free speech movement. You can register at handsoffuhuru.org/register. Uhuru, yep. And on Thursday, April 4th, at 6:30 p.m. Central, so 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement for outreach and recruitment training as part of the We Will No Longer Be Complicit in Genocide Spring Membership Drive. This will take place on Zoom, and you can also attend in person right here at the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis. You can sign up for that at tinyurl.com/USM membership drive. Next slide. Yep. The O'Malley Taught Me Sunday Studies resume on Sunday, April 7th. Tune in on youtube.com/@theburningspear or facebook.com/amali.yeshitela.
You should say the time. Well, it's not in there, so.
I
I think it starts at 9
Central,
yes.
9 a.m. Central.
Yes.
And then mark your calendars for the next APSC monthly national study. Thursday, April 11th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time on the colonial mode of production. Register at apscahuru.org/study. The April issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is hot off the press. If you don't have a standing order or haven't ordered your April bundle yet, you can do that now at theburningspear.store. And a reminder that you can find resources to support your distribution efforts at apscahuru.org/spear toolkit. And then a reminder to tune in to the White Lies Shattered series on the Reparations in Action FM radio show and podcast. You can listen Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central on Black Power 96.3 FM in St. Petersburg, Florida, or get your episodes on demand at uhurusolidarity.podbean.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Search for White Lies Shattered. You can also listen on the Black Power 96 app, so you can, wherever you're located. And then Uhuru Planet Reparations Apparel is clothing, accessories, and more that is forwarding the culture of white reparations to African people. It is an institution of Black Star Industries. Go to the online store at uhuruplanet.com to check out the newest designs, including the No More Genocide in Our Name special edition shirts from the USM convention. So you can find details about these and so many more upcoming events. So stay up to date at theburningspear.com/events. And please make sure to visit uhurusolidarity.org and apscahuru.org to learn more about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the African People's Solidarity Committee, and how you can become a member and join the work to build white solidarity with Black power and unity through reparations. Thank you so much, APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess, Secretary General Allison Haney, and of course, ANWO President Yejide Orunmila, and to everybody out there participating and who contributed to tonight's event. This concludes the event. We will see you next time. Hands off Uhuru.
Hands off Africa.
Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. Unity through reparations. Uhuru.
Uhuru.